Yes, welcome to Last Call. I'm Congressman Blandino. That's Mayor Pereira. Welcome to the show, Week 14. I'm always pro Detroit, pro Lions. My Lions got screwed again. We'll get into that later. Mike, what's in store for us today?
Oh, guess what? We get to talk about pass interference again. Aren't we excited about talking about that issue? And then we're going to talk about what caused you to disagree with two rulings on the field of incomplete pass, which stood in replay. Are we playing kickball in the NFL now? We're going to talk a little bit about that. And maybe just you and I will talk about trends when it comes to actual penalties that are called, total number of fouls. Does it relate to points, so on and so on. So those things to talk about, but I guess first we ought to get into the Bucks and the
let's start with pass interference on a Hail Mary involving Tom Brady to Rob Gronkowski. What happened on that play?
Well, this is one reason why I'm not a fan of the pass interference rule, by the way, but pass interference called on a Hail Mary into the end zone from 50 some odd yards. I don't think it's one I can remember seeing on a Hail Mary because honestly, the standard is different. Look, I know, Dean, it is pass interference. I mean, you got one guy, Davis, not playing the ball, making some contact, another Viking player behind. But we've always thought of the Hail Mary as a standard where more is going to be allowed by the defense. Now, the question is this enough? I kind of don't think it is. I mean, everybody's fighting for position. I have always felt that you either got to take a receiver to the ground, do something more than just not playing the ball or making contact in the back. But again, Dean, this is the rule. This is why I've advocated for a max 15-yard penalty. I mean, should you get a play like this, which ends up to be a 40-some-odd yard penalty and putting the ball at the one, I don't really feel it's enough for pass interference. Clearly see why it's called, but I don't see it as worth the 49 yards or however much it was that got the ball, that gave the ball to the Bucks, and they ended up kicking a field goal because there was hardly any time left on the clock. But it's just a play you don't see very often.
No, I agree. You don't see it very often. I think there is. It's interesting when you think about the Hail Mary. This, for me, I thought it was pass interference. I certainly see why the official called through the flag, not playing the football clearly into Gronkowski's body. I think if it's not that deep throw at the end of the half, we're probably not even talking about this. But I think there's a Hail Mary where everybody is in the end zone. It's more of a jump ball situation where I felt like this wasn't necessarily that jump ball situation where there's going to be more jockeying for position, more boxing out, where you're going to allow more of that contact. This one, to me, Gronkowski, it's almost like he's still running the route. He's not in the end zone. He's running toward the end zone when the contact occurs, not playing the ball. And while I agree that yes, on a Hail Mary, you'd want to see something, above and beyond like a takedown. But in this situation, I just felt that it probably fit more into what is normal pass interference, not playing the ball, significant contact prior to the ball getting there, and can see why the official threw the flag. And obviously it's a big play at the end of the half. And it allows Tampa to kick a field goal and get 3 points. But again, not one you see very often called on that late play at the end of the half, end of the game. I can remember one that was called, I think it might have been Bondo's Buffalo Bills involved in a game against the Patriots with a Hail Mary in the end zone that was called. And that's the last one that I can remember. And that was somewhat controversial like this one.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because you're right. It is pass interference by rule. And by the way, you would want it called at the 20-yard line. It is pass interference. But the whole notion of the DPI standard is different. Should it be? Maybe it shouldn't be. But again, I'm just not a fan of the pass interference. Give them 15 yards like in college and give another opportunity. But I have lost that battle forever. But hey, that's not the only DPI topic that we're going to talk about today. I mean, I'm watching different games and all of a sudden I get a tweet that says, "What the heck was that on T.Y. Hilton involving pass interference? What happened there?"
Yeah, this one kind of took me back to 2019 and pass interference reviews and the concept of, in real time versus slow motion. And so Trayvon Mullen is he does make contact early, and he contacts TY in a way that hinders Hilton's ability to make a play on the ball. The officials throw the flag initially. They have a discussion and they pick up the flag and they say no pass interference. You watch the replays, and in slow motion, he's there early. There's no question. But then you get back to, okay, in real time, is this split-second contact that occurs just prior to the ball getting there, is that truly pass interference? And can officials, apply that in a consistent way? And it took me back to pass interference review last year, where we're saying, well, in real time, it's bang, bang. But when you slow it down and you freeze it, he's there early. I think it's tough to sit there and watch the replay and say it's not pass interference. But when you watch it in real time, and even Hilton kind of gets up and runs back to the huddle, doesn't really respond, get too fired up about it. It's just interesting when you think about real time versus slow motion.
You see all the tweets, and of course, everybody's saying in the tweets, how can you miss such a big call like that? And I agree with you. I mean, it's defensible to me, back in our old roles of having to talk to coaches and stuff. It's defensible if it's not called. It's not really defensible if the call is made in the field and then you pick it up, when in reality, it really is interference, even if it is in slow motion. So I think, I think you have to kind of make a judgment or a decision if you're the calling official. If you're in your gut, you feel like it's a foul, I think you got to stay with it. There's so much communication now with officials that come from other people. I'm sorry, but it is from other officials on the field. It could be coming from the press box where the replay booth is. There's so much communication that it leads you sometimes to go away from your instinct. And I hate it when officials go away from their instincts. And this one kind of bit them, because it is clearly a foul. But I get it. I mean, it is bang, bang. And I watched T.Y. Hilton too. He just walked away from the play. And usually it's kind of like, you see smoke in replay. Do you see a player coming up saying clearly incomplete when the ruling on the field was a catch? But in this one, since it was called, you got to stay with it. And sometimes you just have to follow your instincts, which which one was the calling official didn't hear and probably should have.
Yeah, and I would imagine there obviously was a discussion on the field. I don't think that came from replay. I think that's one
not
that's
this particular case.
That's going to stay on the field, and certainly we've seen situations where replay has given input on certain plays where technically it's not reviewable. I think this is one where they just got together and ultimately picked up the flag. But when you watch those replays, it's tough to sit there and say it isn't pass interference and that the flag should have stayed down. But let's kind of move on from pass interference and let's talk about a couple of no catch plays. A little bit different. These are sideline plays. The first one involved the Eagles, and this was ruled incomplete on the field, challenged by Philadelphia, and ultimately the call stood. What did you see here, Mike?
Well, I mean, this is a tough play. I mean, this is one where, I think you and I in the our Fox Command Center looked at it and said really close, but look at he does get both toes down, and I think it's a catch. I think it's a catch. I think that the main thing is he sticks it, and when we talk sticks it, that means that when the ball gets into his hands, there is no movement of the ball. There is nothing. He gains total control as soon as it hits his hand. And then you look at the feet and say, look, that toe is just on the ground. So yeah, it should be a catch. So I see it. I see it as a catch, but I have to say that it is so close. I am not as much bothered by replay staying with the call on the field that is so close. And I think that's basically the premise of it, clear and obvious, which I always thought you developed those words, which I think are better words than indisputable visual evidence. But while I think this is a catch, if consistently applied, then I can understand why they stayed with this call in the field, because there might be a bit where that maybe the toe was off. I don't know. But again, consistency in application is fine. That one to me, Dean, is really close. And I know you thought it was a catch, but it is a really close play.
Yeah, no, it's a close play, but look, to me, that's a catch. The evidence is clear. Both feet are down. Ertz sticks it. I didn't see any question. I don't see any doubt. And there is judgment. Of course, there's judgment on these plays. That's why they go to review, and they're all going to be close. And yes, the clear and obvious standard is the basic premise of replay. It's gone from indisputable to clear and obvious. But again, I think sometimes we work too hard, or we shy away from making a decision, and we rely on stands sometimes as a crutch. And you want to be consistent. And to me, this is clear. He sticks the catch. He has control. He gets both feet down. The left foot is down. The right foot, I believe, dragged, and he maintains control. And I look at plays. And we're going to look at another play coming up. I look at plays that we have made catches in replay that aren't even close to this, where the player has it, he's falling backward, and he has control for a split second. And because he taps a third toe down, we're giving him possession. Where this, Ertz makes a great play. Both toes are down. To me, this is a catch. The evidence is clear. And quite frankly, stands is a cop-out in this situation. Step up, make the call, and when the evidence is clear. That's how I feel about it.
Well, I didn't think it was clear as Marvin Jones, is the play with Marvin Jones at the sideline, at the goal line. To me, and I talked about a consistent application. To me, Dean, take us through this one.
Yeah, Marvin Jones, they're very similar plays. They're very similar plays in terms of a receiver near the boundary, gaining control, both feet are on the ground. And the issue really is, are both feet on the ground after control is established? And this is another one to me where Jones sticks it, the left foot is down, the right foot is still on the ground. And this is one where he's actually, and this is what receivers will do, he's dragging his foot. He realizes where he is. He's dragging his back foot in anticipation of grabbing the pass, controlling it. So it's dragging before he has control. But then when he sticks the catch, he has the left foot down, the right foot is still down, and then he maintains control on the way to the ground. Again, I thought this was clear. I thought this should have been overturned. They're very similar plays. I'm all for consistency in replay. And if you can't, and I tell replay officials this all the time, if you can't get to 100%, then you have to go back to the ruling on the field. To me, I got to 100%, and I thought they were both catches. And this one should have been overturned as well.
I thought this one was a catch. I mean, I thought it was easier to prove that both feet were on the ground. And again, like you said, sticking it, he sticks the catch. This was the same here. I did think this one was more of, I thought they were both catches, quite frankly. But on the other hand, this one to me was easier to prove. And again, I like consistent rulings. And so if they stay with consistent rulings, I don't have a problem. But you just made an awfully good point that you have seen tougher plays, closer plays, where just the minute drag of the toe, where you see 3 pellets fly up in the air behind it, that constitutes the second foot and it gets changed. So, hey, listen, we're dealing with judgment here, as you said. I mean, it's the official's judgment on the field goes to our judgment, and then it goes to another person's judgment in New York. So when you have that, and I've always said the consistent judgment is so hard to actually get to be consistent with everyone, but we're going to have disagreements. And I think on this one, you and I both disagree.
Yeah. And that's what it comes down to. Again, look, I've looked at many plays in replay. I've been involved in thousands of plays. You've looked at many plays. We're not all going to agree on every single decision. And that's ultimately what it comes down to. And these are close plays. And obviously that's why we're talking about it.
The other thing when we get into replay, I think people should realize Dean brought this system back almost himself in 1999. There were other people that were involved. Dennis Lewin was involved. lot of people
Oh,
involved.
so many good people were. Dick Maxwell. There was a ton of
Yeah,
people that
there was a ton of them, and now really Dean trains all of the replay officials in college. So he's been involved in that process for a long time now. So if you don't like a replay decision that's made in college,
Yeah, let
even
me know, please.
if you live in Detroit, and you don't like a decision that's made
Let
in a
me know,
major league game,
please.
let Dean fire up, send him
You
a
know what's good is that
tell him
there's
what you think about those replay decisions in college.
not a lot of negativity on my Twitter feed, so I need more negativity. So please, when you're bored at home and you want to take out your frustrations about your life on someone you've never met before, who's actually an amazing person, please tweet me. So anyway, let's move on to another game, different situation, something you don't see very often. Giants and Cardinals. Kick return, Dion Lewis fumbles, Cardinals recover. Big play in the game, early in the game. Big change in momentum. What happened here, Mike?
Is this like kickball? Are we playing kickball? I mean, let's kick the ball out of the runner's hands. I mean, this was amazing to me. So you're going to get the ball kicked out of Dion Lewis's hands. I mean, not that I've seen this very often, that's for sure, but you can put this into the main category of, first of all, you just can't do it. You can't do this. This is a personal foul. I don't care if you've been blocked in the back as you're going by Dion Lewis. You just can't kick an opponent to get at the ball. It's kind of like tripping in a way. If that same action was actually at the knee area or below, you could either have a leg whip or you could have tripping. But to me, this is as much of a leg whip as anything, and should have basically been a foul, which would have given the ball back to the Giants. Maybe the Giants, they didn't call the illegal block in the back, but to me, this is just a classic example of an illegal kick or an illegal leg whip, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, and the question came up that this was a turnover ruled on the field, so that makes it an automatic review. Why couldn't replay get involved in that action? And I think it's important for everyone to understand that just because it's a scoring play or a turnover and it's automatically looked at by the replay official, they can only look at the reviewable aspects of the play. And an illegal kick or a leg whip, a face mask, holding, those are all not reviewable. So you can't create that foul, even though it's a turnover. You could look at whether the runner was down. You could look at whether he stepped out of bounds, anything that's reviewable, but non-reviewable aspects of the play, like those personal fouls or any other foul, you can't look at. So ultimately, it is what it is. Like I said on the air, that got a lot of people, Giants fans were not happy with that. But when I say it is what it is, we got to all move on. Okay. We've got another play. We've got another, 3.5 quarters. Let's move on. But, it's an interesting situation.
There's still Giants fans? There still are.
There are. Yeah. My mom.
Yeah. How about your brother?
My brother's a big Giants fan. My brother is a big NFL referee fan. He loves the officials. He texts me throughout the day on Sunday, Monday, Thursday night on how great they are, how well they call the game, how great their eyesight is, how fit they are, how young they are. He is a big fan. Let me tell you.
Hey, that's like my dad when I ran the program, who'd call me on Monday and say, "Your officials are awful." Yeah. We were better back in our time in 1971 on the field than your guys are now. That's when they didn't even have regular film. They did like the watched at the millimeter stuff, Anyway, hey, let's talk a little bit about just the trends of the game and in terms of fouls and points. I mean, we recognized right off the bat this season that there were less fouls being called, and a lot of thought going into, less fouls in certain categories, more points. Let's talk about that. Points first, Dean.
Yeah, well, we always look at the game. You look at the health of the game, and this was something as part of the competition committee review in the offseason. You'd look at things like points per game. plays per game is an important statistic that doesn't get a lot of attention. But when you talk about plays per game, that's your, if you want to call the game a product, that's what you're selling your fans, plays. So you have to look at that number. You look at passing yards. That is another thing you look at, and you also look at penalties. All of those things are going to factor into, you know, how healthy the game is. And when we look at points per game are up at least through 13 weeks, 49.5 points per game, which is up. What we do tend to see as the weather changes in many parts of the country, as we get more inclement weather and cold weather, and teams start to run the ball even more, and not throw the ball as much, you do see points start to decrease. I think at least initially through the games in week 14, the points are down into the 48 range. Still a healthy number. I think when you think about points, 46 is probably your target, if you were to call it that. But it is interesting to see how penalties have changed this year, and those numbers are drastically different. What does that look like, Mike?
Well, I mean, take a look at this. I mean, you're talking about 4 less penalties a game, basically, and to me, it's interesting as you break them into the categories, as you said, we basically 4.8 more points per game, 4.8 more points per game this year. And yes, they're starting to go down, but 4 less penalties. And let's look at some of the categories. I mean, the categories to me are the most interesting. And I think we'll start with maybe holding, when our Buffalo favorite, Stephen
Bondo, get off the
number.
Buffalo, the Bills Mafia
Yeah.
Twitter page and change.
Okay. Can we have some numbers here as we're talking about? No. Oh, there
Thank
we
you.
go. So here you look, and this is one to me that was the most interesting. And remember now, Walt Anderson said clear and obvious when you call fouls prior to the season. And this is the one that fell off the face of the earth. I mean, through 13 weeks, 750 holding penalties down to 442. And you know what? The number in 2020 per game has increased. It has increased, but still look how far down it is, the number of holding penalties. So obviously there's less 1st and 20, 2nd and 20. So that's a big help to the offense. And then defensive holding penalties. I mean, defensive holding penalties down from 192 down to from 257 to 192. Again, to me, a big help. They're not calling as many defensive holding penalties. So that part alone, and then you can get into pass interference too, right, Dean?
Yeah, I think, again, and you mentioned the clear and obvious standard, and fouls are down. That's a significant number. It's a big jump from one year to the next, 4 fouls. The historic average, when you think about, and I've talked about this before, 1975 to 2005, which is arguably when the NFL, the greatest jump in popularity, where it really became America's game. And you're talking about 16 fouls a game, between 15 and 16 fouls a game. And that's a healthy number. Not that you're manufacturing that number, but you have to call fouls, right? Fouls allow the game to be played safely and fairly, and it prevents a less skilled player or a less skilled team from getting and gaining an advantage. And that's important. So the standard has changed, especially as it pertains to offensive holding. Offensive linemen didn't magically stop holding this year. And I'm okay if the competition committee is okay with this standard, if the clubs are okay with this standard, then I'm okay with it. You have to communicate that. If the standard changed and you can't tell me it hasn't, then you have to communicate that prior to the season going in. Here are techniques that we called in the past. We're not going to call these techniques. We're going to focus on this. And you have to communicate that to everyone, because again, when you look at those holding numbers, offensive linemen didn't stop holding. And that is a change in standard, not a change in technique. So that's what you have to think about going forward. Offensive and defensive pass interference. Offensive pass interference, if we can pull those numbers up, I mean, we have half the penalties
away practically
through 13 weeks than what we had previously. So that obviously is going to help the offense. And when you look at defensive pass interference, it's up. Not when you think about a per game basis, that's not a drastic jump. But we aren't we aren't officiating the offensive player to the same level as we are the defensive player. And that's always been the case to some degree. Defense is always, because they're attempting to stop the pass versus the offensive players attempting to catch it. But we are seeing those offensive pass interference numbers drop. That is going to lead to drives that are extended. Certainly defensive pass interference, we talked about the big penalty, the spot foul. Those are going to extend drives. Those are going to lead to points. Points are great, but we can't have 50 points a game. I'm sorry. When every game is a shootout, it loses the excitement of it, right? I don't want to watch. There are certain college conferences where the offenses just go up and down the field and there's never the defense doesn't get a stop and it's just who has the ball last. That's not exciting to me. There has to be a balance, and you can't just score 50, 60 points a game. And again, that's just me, but it is something. It's 13 weeks. It's not, this isn't 4 or 5 years of this. So competition committee will hopefully look at this, and if they're good with it and they communicate that to everyone, then that's the standard. Let's move forward.
And I think they did communicate. I mean, they sent out letters to clubs about the clear and obvious standard. I don't think anybody knew necessarily what that meant when we started out, but I'm one, hey, listen, I like less penalties and less replays, and I care more about the game, the point differential per game, how does that figure in? And it's been about the same. I mean, that's not had a big increase or decrease in from last year, but I like less stops. I do like less stops, but you're right. I don't think teams are necessarily playing any different, although I might think that OPI has changed a bit because they really got tough in calling it last year, especially the picks across the middle. And the officials got really good on that, the blocks before the ball was caught. So maybe teams have changed a little bit in that regard. But clearly one thing you can't argue with, I mean, there's more points and there's less fouls. And I think 98% of the fans probably like that. And I do think it's important that the game stay popular in the eyes of the fans. And if this is one way to do it, and as you say, if the competition committee buys into it after the season is over, then we move forward. But long session, didn't it seem like a long time, Dean, going to this? And
just felt like watching a Buffalo Sabres game. It's like, they're going to dump it in again, forecheck.
Another, as you say, a small market team playing in a major,
small market. Yes, Buffalo's the small market teams don't get the calls in any sport. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to be the one to bring that to everybody's attention sarcastically. Thank you. That's the show. What do we got Thursday night? What game are you going to be working, Mike, Thursday night?
I think I'm going to go with the Chargers and the Raiders in Las Vegas. So Troy and Joe and the group will be in Sin City, if some people call it, but they'll be there for the final Thursday night Fox football game this year.
I wish I could go back to
Thursday night football on Fox. And here we go. Two AFC rivals on a collision course. Derek Carr and the silver and black need this one to keep their playoff hopes alive. He's got it. But the Bolts rookie sensation Justin Herbert is looking to spoil Las Vegas postseason odds. Touchdown, LA! Chargers, Raiders. Thursday night football on Fox, NFL Network, and streaming on Prime Video.